I've been in Dubai now for 3 days and I haven't been out of the apartment. So today, you're literally joining me as I have a little walk around where we live now. And I also want to take the time to talk a little bit about the budget yesterday because it was quite eventful. Quite a lot was announced. And I'm almost a little lost for words, to be honest. There's a few announcements in there that I wish weren't in there. And I just want to give you my honest view of how I see things and maybe some things that can help you. And by the way, let me just say thank you to everyone who joined the stream yesterday. I mean, there were over 500 of you on the stream yesterday following along with the announcement in the budget. And that filled me with joy, filled me with happiness. So let me just grab a seat and I can just talk you through some of the things in the budget which I think are worthwhile talking about. I've got some notes here, and as I go through this, I'd love to know your thoughts on them, and I'd love for you to share what you feel, how you think about them, and if it's going to impact you, if it is going to impact you at all. I want to start with positive first, and that is the fact that she opened the budget with a little bit of help for people who are on the lower side of the income spectrum. So increasing the national living wage, I think is a great thing. That's fantastic. And I think in an age where we've seen an increase in the cost of living and a fall in living standards, this is very much needed. So that is very much welcome indeed. What we also saw in the budget yesterday, and that's probably the only positive that I do want to point out right now. Many people will say, well, the NHS spending, all that kind of stuff is great, but that's a wider story, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Actually, let's talk about it now. What was announced yesterday in the budget is huge borrowing. Now, with borrowing, you may think, well, this isn't going to impact us as consumers, right? Well, unfortunately, you'd be wrong, because at the end of the day, borrowing has to be repaid. And when borrowing is repaid, it's repaid with interest. Now, the impact, let me just run these numbers for you. So the impact of this announcement yesterday is that if you look at the OBR, the forecast for our borrowing as a nation was £87 billion, running up till March for the year. With the announcement yesterday, it's rumored to go up to £127 billion. Now, with that, it means higher interest rates, which means that interest rates aren't going to be as low as we would like them to be. And if you think that's not going to impact you, trust me, it will, because the Bank of England also has to take a stance with this as well. And just as an example, if interest rates, which is what they're saying, are going to be 0.25% higher, if you're looking to purchase a property worth £200,000 with a 10% deposit, that means it's going to cost you an extra £360 a year. Might not seem a lot, but when you consider that in conjunction with other things that you have to pay for and other increases, all of these things start to add up very, very slowly. So borrowing is a huge, huge problem right now. And the cost of us repaying it, we're going to have to bear it as citizens and as people who actually pay tax, where some of this money goes towards paying down this debt. Let's get into national insurance contributions. This was increased for employers, which they were very, very quick to point out did not constitute a break of a party manifesto. And you can interpret this in any way you like, but let's be 100% clear. An increase in national insurance for employers is an indirect tax because somebody has to pay for it. And looking at some of the analysts speaking today, what they are forecasting will happen or predicting will happen is lower pay rises, which means that if you are trying to earn more money because you want to get on the property ladder, or you need more money so you can pay childcare costs or whatever it might be, good luck, because it's going to lead to lower pay rises. According to the IFS, and this is crazy, the bit that I'm about to read you right here, it says that this measure alone could cost the economy 50,000 full-time jobs. 50,000 full-time jobs. That's a lot of jobs. And that means a lot of people not working, paying taxes that could go into this whole economy and being able to make sure that as a country, we're on the road to recovery. 50,000 jobs. So make no mistake, this is going to impact you, and this is going to impact consumers because essentially we're the ones who pay for it. At the end of the day, when you consider this with the cost of living, inflation, all this stuff, this is going to exacerbate that problem even more. The other thing that was announced yesterday, which there is good news in this, but also I think we are a little uneducated around how this works. And to her benefit, she didn't do this. The Tories did this, and that is freezing the income tax threshold. She didn't extend it to 3030 like was reported, and I actually covered on the channel. So it's going to remain in place until 2028. But what people don't recognize is that this is also an indirect tax ride, because ultimately, as you earn more money, you could be in a job where you might get a 10% pay rise or earn a 10% commission. This will pull more people into paying more taxes. Whether you're earning just below the income tax threshold, so your personal allowance, you're earning just below 12,570, this could pull you up to actually start paying tax at 20%. And if you're already firmly in that 20% bracket and you're just on the cusp of 40%, this is going to drag you into the arena where you're going to be paying 40% taxes. So this is an indirect thing. And again, not her fault. It's something that the Tories have done. But it is going to materially impact us as a person. Now, the two things that really got me under the collar yesterday. I'm going to start with the least controversial in my head of them is capital gains tax. Now, capital gain tax for people on lower tax brackets is going to go up from 10%. Let me just make sure I get this right, to 18%. Yes, and if you're in a higher rate tax bracket or additional rate tax bracket, from 20 to 24%. This makes ISAs, tax efficient wrappers, even more important to ensure that you are using. If you're not using an ISA, I have to tell you right now, you're making a really, really, really big mistake, because you have to make sure that you're using an ISA for that. So make sure you're using that. For capital gains, we thought it was going to go up. Luckily, it didn't go up to anywhere near where we thought it was going to be, which was 33 to 39%. And again, I feel like this was just a ploy where they leaked this information, give a high kind of like barrier of expectation, that when they come in and say, well, actually, it's going to be increased by 8% or 4%, you're like, oh, it's not as bad. But either way, it is an increase in capital gains tax. And this is going to impact you if you hold shares outside of an ISA wrapper. So please make sure that you're thinking tax efficiency first. I'm going to head on to the last thing. And this is the bit where I physically gasped on the live stream, and that is pensions. Someone asked me what would be the worst things that they could announce, and I said if they touch pensions, that would be bad. Now, they didn't touch tax-free cash. They didn't touch anything else with pensions, but what they did do is they did bring pensions into inheritance tax land. So in other words, if you have a pension, you cannot pass it on to a loved one and have them inherit it at no inheritance tax like it is currently. So as it currently works, if you die before the age of 75, anyone who receives your pension doesn't pay any tax on it. After 75, they pay their tax at their nominal rate, 20%, 40%, depending on what tax bracket they're in. Now, anyone who inherits a pension from a loved one who passes on has to pay 40% tax. That right there is going to be a puzzle that financial planners are going to have to solve, because now there are no safe havens for the assets that you build up during your life that exclude you from inheritance tax, death tax. I mean, it's pretty depressing to consider that you would have worked for that money, paid tax on that money, you would have acquired that money, invested that money, and when you feel like you want to leave it to someone to give someone else a better start to life, no, they've got to pay the tax as well. Now, I have had a couple of questions in my DMs. I just want to finish on these two questions. First and foremost, should you be using an ISA instead of a pension because of this change? Look, you got to do what you got to do, but here's my view. You have to understand the difference between an ISA and a pension. Within an ISA, your allowance is £20,000. Thank God they didn't touch that yesterday. But within a pension, you can put in £60,000 if you're earning that much. Now, an ISA is still within inside your estate, so it doesn't make any difference whether you put it in an ISA or a pension. The government's still going to tax you on death. So that's the first thing to know. The second thing to know is, obviously, yes, you've got accessibility benefits with an ISA over a pension, but they are designed to do two different things. So make sure that you're clued up with that kind of stuff. The second question I've been getting is, well, if I have a pension in the UK, can I just move it abroad? And the answer to that is, yeah, you can move it abroad. It's within your prerogative, but you probably need to take advice to be able to do that. Because if you're going to try and access things like CureOps, you can't do that on your own. So you're going to need a financial advisor or a financial planner to help you do that. And CureOps may not even be the best route for you to do it, depending on where you're moving to. So go and seek some advice if that is something that is at the forefront of your mind. The last thing that actually, and this is an additional thing that I think maybe is worthwhile pointing out, is stamp duty yesterday for people buying second homes, landlords, investors. I mean, to immediately increase stamp duty by 2% is pretty staggering, if I'm completely honest. And I know someone who messaged me yesterday saying, well, actually now I've got to go back and renegotiate the price of a house that I've literally just agreed to buy. I mean, talk about desperate times. It's just one of those. But hey, listen, let me know what you think. How did you take the budget yesterday? How is it going to impact you? That's what I'd love to know. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my evening in the sun. But anyway, catch you later on. Cheers.